Yeah, I don't know how you respond to that. Like, I finally got the Titan, but it was too late. I think
Yeah.
you're going to have that card really early. And I don't know how you dig for it. The fight wizard with Bravo. Because that's the only way you're going to get enough damage through dominate off of Bravo's ability to be able to kill the wizard before it kills you.
Yeah,
And
I would be interested to see some Guardian builds because sometimes it seems like it's just a, ginormous blowout. Like, but a lot of this game, I think, comes down to like you have one big turn,
right.
kind of, and Guardian kind of doesn't do that. It needs like two big turns.
Well, I mean, my last draw was really hot garbage.
Well, that is.
So, I mean, that card right here, this card is just fine as a
Staunch response.
yeah, it's just fine. I mean, you can spend 2 cards to pitch to it to
Well, yeah, 3 cards block 8.
yeah.
It's like emergency block 8
Right.
because you can do it after all the weird stuff is
But
happening.
you have no block reactions to this. So I'm wondering on the on the Null Rune cards. I'm going to go back to the web, flip over here. On the Null Rune cards specifically, I'm wondering how they read because I'm curious about, can you stack multiple Null Runes? So like if I have the boots.
Well, this says, I'm looking at the skull cap. It says, if your hero would be dealt arcane damage, you may pay this, because this is their arcane barrier 3, you may pay 3 road sources instead. If you do prevent 3 arcane damage that source would deal.
Right, but can you do that if you had like, if you, instead of running that particular the legendary skull cap, if I were to run boots, gloves, and hood and robe, if I were to go all 4, could I spend 4 resources to defend 4 because I have 4 arcane barriers?
I assume so. It seems like they would all trigger.
So it just
says if you would take damage.
So it just almost have to be better. I understand why you play the skull cap because it gives you more flexibility. This card will give you more flexibility in being able to play a regular game, right? Like you have.
This card is very good.
I agree.
The 2 defense helmet. Pseudo 2 defense helmet.
I'm not disagreeing. It has less impact though in the actual wizard matchup, like because there's like we were talking about, you're just very rarely like behind the wizard, right? Like the wizard is going to keep
At
you.
least in the games we played, it did seem like we were just trading damage rather than me saving up. But I don't know if that's correct. Like maybe the wizard is supposed to save up.
Sure, I don't know. I'm just asking because I don't have the answer. Obviously, right. This is the first time I played against the wizard, so it's got me thinking. But I like what that card does as a whole, just in standard gameplay. Having, like you said, the ability to have 1 base defense on it is as good as just about any other helmet out there.
Yeah,
and then
it has battle worn, so you only get 1. But like, assuming that you're playing into the, like, you have less life than your opponent thing, like you're just gonna wait until use it later,
right?
So it'll block 3, and a lot of, there's not really another piece of equipment in the game that'll just block 3,
right?
Except for stupid brute feet.
Well, I'm
there's a reason that thing costs like $900.
Sure. I'm just asking from a perspective of like, again, I don't know tournament procedure, right? So I think that's something that needs to be looked up, because if tournament procedure is present your hero and then present weapon and equipment, like if both players have to present heroes at the same time before presenting weapons and equipment, then I can understand why Blitz decks can have 11 equipment in them, right? Like that's one of the rules in Blitz. And then you go, okay, which it makes sense. I appreciate that that's some sort of meta game that can happen inside, right, of the game. And then then you could go, okay, well, like tectonic plating doesn't do much for me in this matchup, right? Like I'm really playing tectonic plating. The seismic surge is nice, but as we stated before, unless you've got a lot of 4-cost actions, all your 3-cost actions get turned off. So Bravo is essentially a non-bow. So the seismic surge isn't really helping you that much. So it depends on whether or not Bravo sees the card being played at full cost and then gets discounted, because we talked about that a little bit, because this is a replacement on the cost effect. And so I don't know. I don't know how Bravo sees that. So that's a question I have now about Bravo as an interaction. But number 2 is, if that's the case, then like tectonic plating is really just a block 2. And so you could go null rune. You wouldn't need the skull cap.
How you have to like save up with Guardian.
Mm-hmm.
Tectonic plating is like a Guardian only substitute to Fendral's tunic.
Right.
Because it does it doesn't generate you a resource, I guess, because you have to invest it the previous turn.
Right.
But if you know that you're saving up for a turn anyway, like it does generate you a resource the turn it goes off, assuming you don't use it again.
Right. I agree. I mean, there were some things I really liked about this deck. I really like Towering Titan a lot, and I like Showtime a lot. Both of those cards were really cool. This card here, Pummel, is just insane. It seems really, really good with this, with this hero. You could take it, you can pummel up an Anthos to 8. That's also not bad, but without Dominate, like your opponent's just going to have to be forced into 3 cards. That's sort of the same as making them discard a card, so...
Right. I mean, Pummel seemed good. It was extra good in this matchup where I'm trying to, like, dump my whole hand.
Right.
Against Brute or Guardian Mirror, I suppose it's not as good because... like they want to discard on your turn anyway because they want to block. I don't know. Like their single cards are as good as like a combo of multiple cards.
Right.
But against Ninja or Technomancer or Wizard, apparently it seems like the discard is a big deal.
I also think if you're playing a standard combat game, like Bravo gaining Dominate, and then all of these blue cards that are going to hit 4, 5, or 6 are just, they're good. You're not going to turn on their crush ability. It's very difficult to turn on their crush ability. I mean, Crater Fist can do that, but if you're not,
the crush seems like something that like is just icing on the cake, right? Like,
right.
Because one of two things is happening. You're either like smashing them and you get the ability, or they're discarding to block it.
Right.
And the discard to block it is, essentially just as good as most of the crush effects.
Right. So, anyways, I mean, there's an example of a go again where the next action card you play gets +1, but it was just another.
I like the bigger versions of that card. I know you were trying to play all blues, but
well, the reason I'm playing all blues is so when the Towering Titan gets into hand, you can play it, right? Because if you have any card, I mean, if you have any other colored cards in this deck, then what ends up happening is you risk that you don't have the resources to play the Titan, right? And I guess you can arsenal the Titan until you get the hand that would allow you to do that, but that seems like you're really slow playing at that point, right? Because not only do you have to then arsenal a card that you intend to play, then play the card, wait a whole turn to get value from it, like you probably lose in most Blitz games. So I mean, Blitz is a fast format for sure, right? Like it's intended to be, and Bravo just might not be fast enough for Blitz. I mean, that may just be the realization. I think it did fine in game 2, but the only reason why I won game 2 is because I was able to turn to a Titan, right? Like my second turn of the game, I play Titan. Third turn of the game, I go, right? Like maybe it's fourth, maybe it's third and fourth. It was early enough, right? Like it was not a late game. It was what I would call a mid game Titan, and I had already done enough damage that I knew that I could make through Crater Fist and Titan on the board. I could make a damage output that with Dominate seemed very unlikely for you to block. Now there was a risk you could have like a 4 defense or a 5 defense card in your hand, like, and then you're just like, I mean, if you were playing, obviously you're not playing Guardian, but if you were playing Guardian and I knew Staunch Response was in your deck, that's not a guarantee that I get in. But even then, like if you Staunch Response me for 8 and I did 16, I still hit you for 8. Like I'll live with that, right? Like, okay, cool. Like you spent,
well, yeah, you hit me for 8 and I discarded my whole hand.
Right, exactly. So I mean, that was sort of where I was landing on this deck. Now, I didn't know I was going to be playing Wizard tonight, obviously. I've never played Wizard. I'm still a little bit at a loss on the best way to fight Wizard, but that's something that I'll learn with time, I'm sure. So, and by playing Wizard and playing people and other people playing Wizard, I'll be able to watch games and see how that works. So,
I mean, it was the second most popular deck at the Blitz thing.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. I mean, like when FAB did their year anniversary, I think it was their year anniversary. They let's see. They did like a Blitzathon or whatever themselves, where they like just did an all day of like streaming Blitz games. And I mean, there was a couple of Wizard decks that were just out of this world crazy, you know, so not surprised by that at all. I'm trying to see if I can find, we might have to go to FAB's. Let's go to FAB TCG, because they, I think, have the tournament deck lists. I don't know how you found yours, Neil.
I just clicked on one that had the title of like Blitzathon on the deck builder. Yeah,
so Wizard, Ninja, Warrior, Guardian. Okay, so here's a Guardian deck that took 7th. And it has the whole Null Room set. It's also got the Sledge of Anvilheim instead. So I guess it doesn't want to have to work to swing its hammer, because that's just a 6 attack for 4. Seems pretty good. But
I wonder how often it is meant to even use that.
He's got, so obviously he's got 2 Righteous Cleansings in yellow. Which seems pretty solid. It's 7 costs. Look at the top 5 cards of if Righteous Cleansing deals 4 more damage to a hero, look at the top 5 cards of their deck. Banish 1 or more cards with the same name from among them, and put the rest on top of their deck in any order. Banish 1 or more cards with the same name from among them. So if there's 2 copies of a card, you get rid of 1? Is that what it's doing?
I guess. Read it again.
Crush. If Righteous Cleansing deals 4 or more damage to a hero, look at the top 5 cards of their deck. Banish 1 or more cards with the same name from among them. Then put the rest on top of their deck in any order. Banish 1 or more cards with the same name. So
you don't name a card or anything, do you?
No. So it's a really weird way of saying, okay, I think I've got it. It's a really weird way of saying you can banish a card, but if there's multiple copies of that card in the top 5, you can banish both of them. So it hits 1 or more. That's what it's doing. Okay. So this is an interesting deck. It's got Blessing of Deliverance, was a Guardian Aura. When Blessing of Deliverance enters the arena, if you have a card with a cost 3 or greater in your pitch zone, draw a card. Seems really likely to have that happen. At the beginning of your action phase, destroy Blessing of Deliverance to reveal the top 3 cards of your deck. Gain 1 life for each card with a cost 3 or greater revealed this way. So this is a life gain, extends the game. Seems like something the Guardian would want to do. 2x Command and Conquer. Defense reaction cards can't be played to Command and Conquer's Chain Link. So this is a generic attack action. If the Command and Conquer hits a hero, destroy all cards in their arsenal. Wow, that seems pretty good. Crippling Crush. Didn't play this card either, but Bravo Specialization. If Crippling Crush deals 4 more damage to a hero, they discard 2 random cards. This has an attack 11 for a 7 cost.
Funny.
They discard 2 cards at randoms. That card seems really good.
You spend your whole turn doing it, but it's probably a blowout most of the time.
Yeah. They got 2 pummels, which I was running 2 pummels. I was just running the blue version of pummel. They're running the red version. The red version gives +4 attack. And then 2 Sigils of Solace, which is just gain 3 life. I can see that. Again, just extending Bravo's game. Seems like something that Bravo wants to be doing. And then the rest is pretty similar to what I was running with the 2 X's on everything that is got, blue. So Buckling Blow, Cartilage Crush. I really like Buckling Blow. I was looking at that card quite a bit. So yeah. Okay. I probably would like to try this deck. I don't know if I can find it, so let's see if how did you find it by searching the decks?
Yeah, let me see if I can find it again. Because I just went to FAB, DB, browse decks, and I selected Kano as the hero. And I think it's this BlitzCon Kano anonymous.
Mine is just not searching.
$1,937.
So it's using the I do Kano Blitz, and it is
this is what it was. It was
not returning anything.
It's BlitzCon-Kano, submitted by Anonymous. Total cost of the deck is $1,937.41. Pretty expensive for a 40-card deck.
What's Nick holding Blitzathon? Is that what it is?
What?
Oh, it's no. BlitzCon -Kano.
Kano.
Okay. Yeah, so that one I'm showing 1937.41. I also show a Nick holding Blitzathon at 22.43.52. Nick.
This one has the skull cap in it.
Nick was not in top 8, according to this.
Okay.
So let's see if we can pull up the Guardian deck. Oh. Doesn't look like anybody's brought over the Bravo deck. So, let's build it.
The majority of these decks, like, the reason they're expensive is that Eye of Ophelia, which obviously is good and makes a deck better, but is not necessary.
No. I agree. I mean, I'm not arguing that at all.
And Fiddles is expensive too. Though again, I mean, it could be something else.
If y'all are trying to talk to me while I'm doing this, I apologize. I have my Twitch chat covered up, so I will.
So you don't want to talk to him anyway?
Yeah, I would like to talk to him.
Just kidding, see, I missed you.
Thanks, Skullcap. Where's the Crater Fist? Oh, there it is. Jeez. Brain not working, team. So one thing that I will say after getting COVID that has really messed with me is my ability to just critical think is much slower. I don't know why.
The dumb?
What's that? Yeah, I mean, I just like my brain just like I'll be in the middle of something. I'm like, what was I doing? Like seriously, I don't know what that's about, but it happens.
Older men go senile, Jesse.
I'm not that old. Leave me alone.
I don't think you. I think you're still sharp as a.
I don't know if that's true, but I appreciate your vote of confidence. All right, let's go. Blessing of Deliverance. It's red 2. Okay. Command and Conquer 2. Rippling Crush 2. Pummel. 1 pummel. No, there's 2 pummels. Sorry. Sigil Solus. Like, I really like the Guardian. I don't know what it is about the Guardian, but it sort of calls to me.
Yeah, I think Guardian's cool. It definitely plays on a different axis than a lot of these decks seem to, where I guess it's similar to Brute, where they just have like one big match.
The Brute, to me, it's got too much randomness in it. Like, even in the Rhinar version, where you just have to randomly discard a card from your hand sometimes, like, it's really difficult to sometimes make Rhinar do what you want him to do. And I think that inconsistency, I mean, I understand it's very thematic, but it hurts the ability for Brute to be very powerful sometimes. Like, I mean, you can either just crush somebody or get crushed, right? And we saw that a couple of weeks ago when we were streaming and you were playing Kano. Isn't it Kano? Not Kano.
Yeah.
Kaio. Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, he's extra random, right? Because he's a dice roller, but yeah, I mean, like the shoes or the shirt or whatever that rolls a dice, see how many resources you get, and but it's meant to be that way. It's kind of flavorful to it. I think that the Rhinar is a lot less random because you don't have to discard at random to do it. You just have to discard, and a lot of their cards make you discard.
Right. We're getting closer here. Sorry, it's taking me just a little bit of time. I just want to see. I'm going to publish this deck. I will label it properly. I'm not going to take credit for it. But it's not published on FABDB right now, so I thought I'd just do the community a solid here. And let's see. Let's call this... we'll just call it exactly how it looks. Campaign. Blitz on 7th. Spaces out and see if we can fit this in. We're going to do the old Twitter tricks.
Them Twitter tricks. You turn in tricks on Twitter?
Something like that.
Oh.
Okay, so it should be published now. If you were to go out to the deck builder or browse the decks, yep. And this BlitzCon deck that I just published for Bravo is $563.96. So it's also kind of an expensive deck. Not super cost effective. I would venture to guess, like if you look at it, you can probably get away with not needing the Sledge of Anvilheim, but I'm guessing that's not very expensive coming out of Crucible of War. You could probably get away with not needing the Arcanite skull cap because you can just play Null Rune Hood in its place. And maybe the skull cap is better against the Rune Blade because we haven't played with Rune Blade yet either, so I don't know for sure.
Better than the armor helmets too.
Yeah. I mean, he plays Helm of Eisen's Peak to give the hero +1 intellect. I don't mind that. If you're gonna,
I think that card's really good. Again, it's one of those setup cards,
right?
But like, I don't know. It seems like a lot of the decks have skull cap.
Right. So, I think this deck is interesting. I'm guessing that your expensive cards are going to be. This is a Majestic, yeah. So, not terribly expensive. Command and Conquer as a regular card is $25 in Unlimited. It looks like, and $45 in Alpha first print. Crippling Crush is probably fairly inexpensive. Yeah, $11. I mean, these cards aren't super expensive because you need 2 copies, so like they're not terrible. I don't know what else is really driving sort of the price here, other than the Arcanite Skull Cap is definitely driving a price at $150. And it's called Cold Foil. Does anybody know? I guess maybe Cold Foil still exists. That's a pretty big jump. There's one vendor at $750 and another vendor at $150. And I didn't think that we had cold foils in Unlimited. I thought they were all rainbow foils. So somebody can maybe correct me on that if I am wrong. I'm certainly willing to be wrong. The Crater Fist is relatively inexpensive. You're talking $11-12. Helm of Eisen's Peak is not expensive. Tectonic Plating is expensive. Rainbow Foil is $90. So that's a pretty expensive piece, but not terrible. Let's see. We have to imagine Showtime's got to be up there a little bit too. For a regular card, $2. Not bad. So really, your most expensive pieces are your Arcanite Skull Cap and your Tectonic Plating. Although Command and Conquer is pretty pricey. As a regular card, it's $25. So that's a pretty pricey single for just a generic, but it must be used in a lot of decks. It seems like it would be a good card in a lot of decks. So, because they can't play defense reactions on it. So you can sort of dominate, guarantee a hit because they can't defend react. And that's something that Dominate doesn't get around very well. So seems pretty solid. That's cheap. We're just looking. Righteous Cleansing. This is also a fairly expensive card, but not really. I mean, $5 for a single Majestic. I mean, you're not going to lose any sleep over buying that card on the market if you're building this deck. Yeah, I don't think there's anything else that really jumps out to me as being like, super like expensive on it. So really, you're just looking at big costs in Skull Cap and Tectonic Plating. And we just got done talking about how you could probably play this equipment list without either of those 2 cards and still be fairly competitive, because plating is great, don't get me wrong, but I'm still not convinced plating is. I think plating's better in this deck because you're really living off of Crippling Crush, which costs 7, and then Righteous Cleansing, which costs us 7. So those 2 cards is what you're sort of living off of, and if you're living off those 2 cards, reducing them to 6 still triggers Bravo's ability. So, yeah. I don't know. Your thoughts on it, Neil?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, again, a lot of the expensive cards in this game are resources, right? Like, it seems that way anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Like ways to cheat resources, which is very common in games in general, is that the ones that cheat resources are the most powerful type cards.
Mm-hmm.
But again, like when you watched me play, obviously I was playing Fendrils, which is one of the like most expensive generic equipment. because it's obviously extremely powerful. But the turn that I like killed you or did a million things wasn't a Fendrel's turn.
Right.
And maybe I'm supposed to, like, if I was actually optimizing, I would have, done it on the Fendrel's turn, but it just didn't work out that way because you made me discard or whatever. I was still able to do it without the Fendrel's resource.
Yeah, I mean, I just tried to slow you down. Is all I tried to do.
Right,
there.
and that's totally fine. So that's just an example of how, like, the Fendrels being in your deck, or in your case, the seismic tunic, tectonic tunic, being in your deck, it does make it some percentage better. Having the Eye of Ophelia in my deck makes my deck some percentage better, but because they're not cards that like I could still do most of the things I'm doing with any 3 resource card in my hand instead of Ophelia's, and I could still have a big turn whether I have Fendrels or not. I think.
Sounds good, man. Thanks for joining us tonight. Sorry, Neil. Just didn't want to.
Yeah. I think that if you're going to a big tournament, you're trying to be very competitive, and you're trying to look at these top 8 decks from Blitzcon, like, you're going to see these expensive cards in them because they make your deck better. But obviously, like, the Fendrels had almost no impact on our game. The Tectonic Tunic, how many times did you use it but not pay into it again the same turn? Like, you only actually gain something from it if you use it the turn prior and then don't use it the turn that you do stuff.
Right. No, you're right. I mean, there's.
So, with that in mind, like.
Well, Bravo.
They're cool, and you want to have them for your collection, and they do make your deck better, but it's not required.
Right.
Like,
and Bravo. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Sorry, I was looking at those Kano decks. Obviously the one I played was almost $2,000, but there are ones that say like Kano Popper, and they're like, $200 or whatever, which some are like $25.
Right.
And I think the $25 ones you would be hard pressed to be competitive with at a real tournament. The $200 ones are well within the realm of like other competitive games, and I think are probably just fine.
Right. Yeah. So I think the next thing is sort of to look at the Ira decks, because I think they seem like people are talking about them being really, really good. I don't fully understand utilizing Zephyr Needle yet, but I guess maybe you're playing Zephyr Needles with against warrior, or not warriors, wizards would be my guess. So I mean, that seems to be, Ira seems to be very much on the way to some sort of powerful setup here. So I mean, I will build the Ira deck also and post it to FABDB after we get done here. I think it's worth exploring it, and playing it, because I think one of the things that Neil and I need to do at this point in order to expand our game is understand what these decks are doing well in order to get better at our own deck building. And it's hard to do that when you're just playing, like, and we don't know whether we're playing good stuff versus good stuff or bad stuff versus bad stuff. So certainly now that we have a big tournament to sort of leverage that, we have a lot more opportunity to compare apples to apples, right? And go, okay, well, can this beat Ira? Because Ira is clearly going to be one of the forefronts of this current meta until we get new cards, right? So when we get the 4th set for Flesh and Blood, maybe Ira won't be the best anymore. But until we get new cards from there, she certainly looks to play the part in Blitz in some way. So, and certainly there are some very expensive cards like Mask of Momentum in this that are going to be difficult for people to obtain and play. And I do think that Ninja in particular tends to be the class that requires more Majestics and super rares and things like that. We were talking about this on Discord this last week, and if you're not on the FAB Discord, you should consider it. It's a really good Discord. But basically we were talking about a popper format for the game, like a blitz format, but using poppers. So And the discussion really came down to there's very few classes that cannot play rares. So at the end of the day, like the rare card, which in this game is more like an uncommon, are really important to most of the decks in some way. But Ninja in particular suffers from almost all of their combo finishers happen in the Majestic or higher. And so you really, and actually I don't know whether they consider super rare more or less rare than Majestic, because there is a super rare in the Welcome to Wrath and Arcane Rising sets. But basically, what the general consensus was Ninja would not be good and would be nigh unplayable in a Pauper format. Maybe that's bad. Maybe it's bad. Maybe it's not. I don't know.
Well, I mean, if we're talking about Pauper specifically, I assume we're talking about Magic.
Right.
That's literally like a sanctioned Magic Online format. And that was kind of what started it. And Pauper is a very, like, if you compare Pauper to how other Magic formats works, it's not the same.
Sure.
Like, and it has its own ban list because stuff is crazy, and like you think of Pauper, and in most games this is probably true where it's commons only and it's going to be less powerful decks, but like essentially every card that has Storm that's a common, even if they're bad, is banned in Pauper and Magic because the Storm deck is too good. Like, there's the problem with these combo decks in Pauper is that like the answers to combo decks are all rares.
Traditionally,
nothing stops them.
Right.
So like you have to take that kind of stuff into account. And if Ninja just happens to not be as good in Pauper, it just doesn't. I don't think that's a downside. Like, they weren't designing the game for Pauper,
Right.
they wouldn't have printed rares. So like,
but
if Ninja is one of the best in Constructed, it doesn't need to be the best in Pauper.
Well, and I don't know if Ninja's best in Constructed. I wouldn't go, but in Blitz, Ninja certainly, and Ira particularly, seems to be rising to the top or bubbling to the top. But one of the things that we would have to ask in that is whether or not the Blitz format, the 40 card Blitz format, which I think makes sense for Pauper, the shorter game, but then also whether or not you have to include the quote unquote rare in the Pauper format for FAB, because quite frankly, there just may not be enough commons in the classes, and it would make almost all the classes kind of incohesive, if you will, not cohesive. I'm not using the correct word there, but not cohesive in terms of being able to build a functioning deck is what most of the more veteran players were talking about in the Discord. And I can get behind that as a reason to at least include the rares. So I don't know, maybe we should try it sometime on stream, play a little Pauper.
Sure. I think that sounds fun.
Yeah, I would just be curious. I think for our rules' sake, we'll play it next Wednesday, but for our rules' sake, nothing above an R rarity. So you would have rares and commons in the card pool. Everything else would be off limits. I'd just be curious to see what we can come up with. And again, I mean, maybe Ninja thinks differently. If you don't have the combos, maybe you play different cards, but I don't know. It's just something that I kind of want to explore, because like, now that you're gone, I've lost my sort of base for playing Flesh and Blood in person, right? Like, I don't have that base.
Right.
And we know very, very much how difficult it is trying to get a game off the ground in our local community. We've tried it with many, many games. And Magic and Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh! Stick, and everything else tends to be a lot more difficult to get players interested. Now, I will say that Flesh and Blood is getting a lot of attention, and so I think that's a positive for potentially growing it. It's getting more attention than a lot of other games would get, right? Like, obviously Channel Fireball picking it up is a huge deal. So,
right.
So I think there's a chance that more Magic players will play Flesh and Blood than they would any other game, even another WotC game like Transformers. Like, I kind of thought, well, when Transformers came out, I kind of thought being WotC behind it, that there would be a lot of interest from the Magic core that would just know that it's going on. But the reality was, WotC never marketed to the Magic core for that at all. They just expected the Transformers core, the toy collector core, to become card gamers, and that never materialized for them. And so I think when we start talking about this game, there is a better chance, slightly better chance, that a Magic player would be more inclined to try it. But I think any savvy Magic player who's played a lot of Magic instantly starts looking at the marketplace to determine whether or not it's something they can get into, right? Because Magic is so expensive. And because of that, they don't really have the disposable income in a lot of cases to play both, right? Like a lot of Magic players are sort of like, oh, I got my paycheck today. I've been saving up to buy my Tormagoy for my modern deck or whatever, right? And that's going to cost me $160. I can't buy anything else because I'm buying this one card to make my modern deck better, right? And you're going to have a very similar type of experience here when you talk about legendary equipments and things like that. But if the Pauper format, to me, if the Pauper format is a point where players can play the game on the cheap, $50, $60 for a deck, maybe even less, then you get into a place where it's super accessible, and they will naturally sort of evolve away from Magic, if you will. Like, right? Like, they'll go, okay, yeah, sure, I can play Magic every week. I'm kind of getting sick of it. It's time for me to do something else. And Flesh and Blood is fairly accessible. Next thing you know, they're starting to buy more Flesh and Blood stuff and build better Flesh and Blood decks. And so it'll sort of come at a slower, sort of more methodical pace, in my opinion. I think that's how you're going to have to grow a community in this game. I just don't think you're going to be able to sit down and say, hey, buy a starter deck and buy some booster packs and play Flesh and Blood, right? Like, people are going to go, no, I've already got one collectible card game. One's enough. Like, to get mass market penetration, to really get mass market penetration, like a Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh, or Magic, you're going to have to create some accessibility in this game. And the downside is that all of those games that I just mentioned have 25 years of card pools, right? Like, they've got enormous card pools. Right. They've got multiple formats. They've got all of these things. And Flesh and Blood's got multiple formats now, which is a positive. I mean, you've got Draft and Sealed and Blitz and Constructed. Those are all great things. But there's still a cost barrier. If somebody looks at the game, knows nothing about the game, and goes, I want to know what the best deck is, I'm going to net deck it. Oh, it's going to cost me $1,000. I'll pass. I'm not going to play. I'm out. Right? Like, I'm out before I even play the game. And that's bad. That's sad. It's sad because this is a really good game. Like, this is one of the best card games that I've played in a very, very long time. And I mean, I really enjoyed Transformers. Transformers was a lot deeper than it looked like on the surface. And that's exactly what this is. I mean, Flesh and Blood is so much deeper than what it looks like on the surface. But you're not going to get that in your game one play, and you're not going to get that in a demo play. You're going to get that from playing multiple games and seeing, oh man, there's all these things going on. How do we fight this? How do we do that? How do I get familiar with this particular hero class? Like, so I'm curious about it, and hopefully our viewership will be interested in seeing that as well, because I think that it's a way, if you're a community builder, to build. I'm open to ideas on other ways to build community as well, but I think this is, in my opinion, one of the best ways to do it.
Right. I mean, the best way to attract a community, especially at a local level, is just like the cost barrier of entry. There's just nothing else there, because the average person isn't going to run up and spend, I don't know, $300 on cards right away. They're going to want to dip their toe in first.
Right. And I think one of the things that makes this game more enticing to what I will call a casual player is that there is the chase rares still, right? And that's something that a lot of games struggle with, is getting valuable chase rares in their packs. Because let's face it, if a guy is going, I got $15 a week to play a game, right? and I can go spend $15 on magic packs, and I might open a $30 or $40 card in that magic pack, or I can go spend $15 on Flesh and Blood and maybe open a $200 or $300 card. Flesh and Blood, quote unquote, looks like a better gamble. So I do think there is value in the chase rare. I don't want to eliminate the chase rare from the game. I just want to find a way to introduce the game at a cost-effective measure. So that's where I think the popper format fits perfectly into that bill.
Yeah, I agree.
So, all right. Well, we managed to fill up 2 hours again, Neil. We do that pretty well now. I didn't even realize it had been 2 hours. I don't know if you had, but
I beat you like an hour ago.
Yeah, well, that's true. I did get one win in today.
Then I just clocked out. I
did. I need to know if you're up to date on Mandalorian at some point, but we'll talk about that offline.
Yeah, I watched it. We finished it 2 days ago. And
okay.
I think it's just the best.
I agree. It's pretty awesome. So, all right. Well, we will be back tomorrow night with Ashes. We'll be doing Ashes Constructed tomorrow night, and we'll be talking a little bit. You and I will be talking a little bit about AIL, I think, if we have time, depending on how quickly we get through our Constructed matches. So I've got my AIL match on Friday. I won't be streaming that, but I will be recording it. So if you want to see my week 1 AIL match and see sort of what Ashes is doing, if you're an Ashes fan, you should head over to our YouTube channel and check it out, because it is one of the coolest decks, not my deck, but one of the coolest decks that I've ever played against in that game. And the opponent I played against has won many, 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 many Ashes tournaments throughout his Ashes career, going back into 1.0. So very experienced Ashes. And it was really interesting to see how his deck turned. And it got my wheels, spinning on different ideas for Ashes. Certainly gave me sort of an aha moment in Ashes and understanding how the game functions at a certain level. I still have a lot to learn. But yeah, I think it's a good match. And even though I, spoiler alert, got my rear end just brutalized in that process. But, sometimes you just have to take those losses to learn. And that's okay. I was like, I just sort of sat in awe watching it happen. Like, I could see what was happening when it happened. And I was like, I have nothing to deal with. I have no way to fight at all. And I was like, that's amazing. Because I really thought the deck that you and I had been working on, your Rin deck, and talking about offline, I really thought that deck was pretty good. Turns out.
Yeah, I mean.
Maybe not.
The way that you described it to me, I haven't actually watched the video yet, but I will make sure I watch it before tomorrow so we can talk about it online.
Yeah.
The way that you described the deck to me, it sounded like it fought on all the same axes as our deck does.
It does.
Where it leans on Fallen.
Yep.
It leans on slow grindy advantage.
Yep.
And it was slower and grindier, which is a lot worse for the kind of our deck is not positioned well for things that are grindier than it. Our deck was positioned for
I'm not actually sure it's slower. You'll have to watch it. You really should watch it. Because I mean, he's 5th turn, round 1, 3 Fallen books on board. That's faster than us.
And so this is something that I think is very interesting, and we were talking about this, and we can talk about it more tomorrow. A couple weeks ago when I was playing the weirdo mill yourself all the way deck, he was doing something similar where he just milled himself a lot.
Right.
Just to have access to those cards. And I thought maybe my deck was going too deep when I was playing the Namin version.
Yep.
But it's there's a reason that Dredge is still the best deck in a lot of Magic formats that it's not banned in.
Right.
And it's because even though milling card is not the same as drawing cards, when your card pool is large and you have a lot of graveyard access, which Ashes does, being able to mill yourself is close to drawing cards. When you do it in very large numbers like Dredge does, then you just have this access to all the cards in your library that you wouldn't normally have.
Right.
And so he's using that leveraging that in a way similar to what I was doing, but not going like all in, just going far enough in that he like essentially tutors up the Fallen books.
He tutors the Fallen books, and he's got two paths to victory. One doesn't involve tutoring the Fallen book. So it was interesting to see the deck had that kind of flexibility too, because he described the gameplay. So we'll discuss that deck tomorrow night, probably after our games are done. You know, and we'll just see what happens. But I think it's interesting to see it. Fallen's very powerful. I mean, we knew that. We were already on Fallen. Yeah. We were on Fallen before AIL ever started because it was just one of the most advantageous engines in the game. So
right, it was, you know, that first week before Fallen book was previewed, and I was playing Chanter Revenge. I was like, Chanter Revenge isn't good enough. You know, if this is the theme, there needs to be something better that draws you to this theme, and Fallen book is that thing.
That's right. Absolutely. All right. Well, Neil, I appreciate all your time tonight, man. It's been so much fun playing with you again.
Yeah, it's an hour later.
I'm sorry about your luck, but yeah, you moved. I can't help you on that. But yeah, no, I mean, it was. I'm glad to have you back on stream. It's a lot of fun to be able to play games with you, and we will post these games to YouTube. So if you missed them or you want to go back and watch them, cool. Well, I will. If you can send me, do you know which Blitzathon deck he copied? You know which one for sure. I just want to give proper credit to the player that played it at BlitzCon. So, okay. I'll try to figure it out. If you can just send me your list, just put it in text and send it to me. I'll try to figure it out from the deck lists that are on the top 8s. And, you know, we'll just, we'll be back next week with more FAB. And we'll be on tomorrow night with Ashes. So appreciate everybody that spent some time with us tonight. Thank you to all of our followers and subs. You know, like I said, Tesla Ghost followed us here tonight again, and we will see you all soon.
Thanks, guys.